Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association webinar, where we are going to take a long, hard look at LGPS administration and explore ways to perhaps make it simpler and more efficient. My name is Rachel Pine, and I look after content for the PLSA's conference and training offerings. This time of year, we're usually in the Cotswolds with 400 of you for our annual local authority conference. We've planned this LA Live week of webinars to cover off some of the content we would have had there. And of course, we're looking at the pandemic's impact as well. What has become clear to us at the PLSA over the past few years is that along with regulation, investment, and governance, administration is clearly an area that requires more of our attention. Of course, administration is arguably the most important and fundamental function of this scheme, to administer and pay out member benefits. In recent years, the LGPS has grown significantly more complicated, with changes in taxation, rates of accrual, and the move to career average earnings. In the near future, administrators will need to account for GMP, equalisation, and the McLeod judgment, big challenges on their own. To add to this, the scheme has grown in size to just under 6 million members. To give some perspective, the population of the LGPS is larger than the populations of Singapore, Denmark, or Finland. And of course, the current situation will have many, if not all of the pensions administrators, having shifted to home working in a very short space of time. Not to mention, we're just edging into annual benefit statement season. Clearly, there's a lot going on for LGPS administrators, so we made sure that today's speakers were well equipped to take us through this particular topic. Joining us today are Joe Darbyshire, Managing Director of Local Pensions Partnership Administration, and Yunus, who is the Business Development Manager of the West Yorkshire Pension Fund. I'd like to start with a couple of polling questions for you. They're going to pop up on your screen. You can see them now. And the first question is, you can see them there together actually. How many members are you responsible for the admin for? And the answers are fewer than 10,000, 10 to 50,000, 50,000 to 100,000, or more than 100,000. The second question is, how many pensioners are you responsible for the admin for? Fewer than 2,000, 2,000 to 5,000, 5,001 to 20,000, or greater than 20,000. So it looks like we have schemes representing different sizes, but a little bit of a bias today to the larger scheme. So that'll be good for our speakers to know. And then I'm going to ask you one more question, which is about your administration. Is your administration in-house, outsourced with payroll in-house, outsourced with payroll outsourced? As you can see, the vast majority here today are doing their admin in-house. So thank you everyone who voted. Fantastic. So I'm going to turn this over to our first speaker now, Joe Darbyshire. Welcome, Joe.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joe Darbyshire. I'm the Managing Director of Local Pension Partnerships Administration. I've been at LPPA for just over a year. Thank you to the PLSA for giving me the opportunity to talk to you all today. Like everyone else, I'm sure you're getting used to juggling even more things than usual. I'm a mom, I'm homeschooling, I'm trying to convince myself that grey roots are a fashion statement. And I sincerely hope that I don't get a repeat of the last time I did one of these where my window cleaner Kate turned up to clean the windows. To give you some context in terms of LPPA, we are one group with essentially two operating businesses, LPPA, which is administration I look after, and LPPI, which is our investments business. We administer pensions for 17 administration clients. 11 of those are local government, 5 are fire clients, and we have 1 police client. We have 600,000 members, 160,000 pensioners, and we manage 1,800 employers across those 17 clients. Each month we pay over £80 million in pensions and over 25 million of lump sum benefits, put 650 new pensions into payment, process over 25,000 cases, including 2,000 new starters and 900 leavers. handle over 10,000 calls into our pensions help desk and respond to over 11,000 emails. Big numbers, but I would say, you know, in some situations it's helpful that we can flex resource and have resilience, particularly in current times. In terms of administering the LGPS, it is complicated. There are lots of external factors that we have little or no control over. Regulatory changes, pooling is an interesting one. Obviously, that's mandated for investments. It'll be interesting to see whether the government thinks that it will take any steps to think about pooling administration in the future. GMP reconciliation, I'm sure like everyone else, we've done quite a lot of work to date on that. What we are expecting now is a delay in returns from HMRC, given the COVID situation. And we're already starting to see some of that. They've just got bigger things on with furlough schemes and everything else at the moment. I think we all know that McLeod is going to generate work. I think the size and scale of that at this point is a little bit unclear, but we can take steps to prepare for that. Main one to me being about the quality of data. We know the quality of data is going to be important to be able to work out what we need to do. So we're taking proactive steps to try and get ahead of the game on that one. Aggregation I've highlighted because changes in rules led to increased pressure on aggregation. When I arrived at LPP a year ago, we had a significant number of cases that were aggregation cases that were in a backlog situation. I don't think that's uncommon. And we recruited additional administrators to blitz it. You know, we don't have that aggregation backlog anymore, but it's been interesting for me to see how many extra resources we've needed just to manage aggregation on a business as usual level. And that obviously varies depending on the demographics of your scheme. And we can see, you know, in LPP managing a number of LG schemes that it's different for different schemes. So for our county council type of schemes where you've got dinner ladies and people who are moving jobs quite frequently, you can see that there's a much bigger demand for aggregation than there is for our smaller clients. Smaller clients maybe who don't have the same employers and demographics. Obviously we provide a service, so you know, how do we provide a really good service in what is a complex environment? I think technology is key to how we simplify things, and being new to pensions administration systems, I think we can be more demanding consumers with the leverage we have as LGPS. And it's a fairly small market at the minute. It'll be interesting to see how the players in the market adapt and help us with things like McCloud. I do think as an industry we talk in jargon quite a lot, and I think we can do more with that. How many of our deferred members would know what the word deferred means? I can evidence that how little people really understand about their pensions when in the COVID situation, we've had an increase in calls into our help desk with people asking, you know, has the value of the pension gone down? When they don't understand the difference between the headlines they see in the papers about people losing 20 to 25% from their pension pot and the scheme that they're a member of. I think we can do a lot with innovation, and what encourages me about that is there's a real community spirit, I think, across local government pension scheme administrators, and a real sense of wanting to collaborate and share. And I think we can look across the industry and within and outside the industry for ideas on how to improve. As part of my induction, I've been to meet a number of other local authorities, and you know, those of you that I've spoken to really helped my thinking and lots of ideas. And engagement, I think self-service is key to how we simplify things. The more we as administrators can encourage our members to self-serve, and the better. Obviously that's dependent on the technology too. Engaging them is a challenge because pensions isn't sexy. And then to overlay on all that, it's got more complicated, you know. Nothing like a pandemic to make things harder. So we've all had to face into that over the last few weeks. In terms of what we've done with our response, you know, we've gone over a very short space of time to get 200 people that we have working in pensions administration working at home. That's meant we've had logistical challenges around deploying laptops, screens, keyboards, desks, chairs, all those kinds of things. We've made sure we've listened to the regulator and the regulator's concerns around payment of benefits. So we've strengthened the processes around our pension and payrolls, some practical things like running next month's payroll files in advance. Obviously, they wouldn't pick up any changes over the course of the month, but if anything happened to those key people in our payroll team, there's a file to run, which would be better than nothing. And we've increased resource for deaths, which we anticipated seeing an increase in deaths. We have seen that, I'm sure others have, but we've been able to sort of redeploy staff. That's where having a big administration team is helpful, where you can redeploy staff. The biggest challenges, I think, from a COVID situation that have complicated things, contact centre, we had an advice solution that people in the office in Preston were using. It's an older one. It wasn't easy for us to deploy that. So we've had to move on to a Microsoft Teams solution, which is helping us to man a contact centre, but it's not giving us some of the management information that we're used to. So we are looking for a more robust solution, but it's certainly been something we've been able to implement in the short term. And our post, that was the other challenge for us. So much post and paperwork coming into the offices. We've effectively created a digital post room with a third-party supplier, redirected all our mail. So this third party now opens the mail, scans it in. So there's no need for us to have physical people in the office to open post. And we've taken employee wellbeing very seriously in terms of surveys, online team social meetings and quizzes. And we had a walking challenge where we encouraged people to join teams and had a competition to see how many miles they could walk. Things like that to encourage people to stay healthy and safe. So COVID's just added another layer of complexity to something that was already complex. But I do think there's a lot of things we can do proactively, in collaboration together across this community to manage it and make our lives easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. My name's Yunus Gajra. I'm Business Development Manager for West Yorkshire Pension Fund. So I'll pick up probably on quite a few things Jo said as well as adding to those. I'll just get my slides. Yeah, so a little bit of context background as well, just to put things in perspective. West Yorkshire Pension Fund is administered by the City of Bradford Metropolitan District Council. We administer the LGPS for West Yorkshire Pension Fund, for Lincolnshire and for Hounslow Pension Fund as well. And on top of our local government clients, we administer the firefighters pension scheme for 16 fire authorities. Each of the fire authorities have 3 schemes, so they are very much more complex than LGPS, I would say. So we provide administration for 700 employers. Some of those are closed employers. Over 400,000 members we provide administration for. And we do Lincolnshire as well. So I can just move my slide down, that's it. So pensions administration, yes, it has just got more difficult. I don't think anybody would say pensions administration was easy, and we were all struggling with the complexities of the LGPS, the regulations, the KPIs, etc. But it took a whole new meaning when we suddenly forced into a different way of working. Overnight, we had to implement our business continuity plans. And I would say to a level that we could have probably never have imagined, never mind planned for. We may have thought of little scenarios, but in terms of having to do everything in a different way was probably a major challenge. And I would say it's a big success, certainly from listening to or seeing polls and other success stories, that we probably all deserve a pat on our back to say local government has risen to the challenge very well in terms of continuing to provide the administration service to more or less the same levels as before the COVID-19 crisis. Ourselves in Bradford, we had great support and engagement with the council's IT department, who were faced with a huge challenge of equipment, of equipping the whole council and with getting laptops, etc. So getting pensions recognised as a priority enabled us to be up there in terms of meeting our demands, getting the equipment to work from home for laptops, additional equipment like monitors. So it meant that disruption for us was quite minimal. We also had to find innovative solutions to such things as printing directly to mail houses and reduce the local printing, looking at scanning incoming post at source rather than having that to be done in the office. So those were all major initial challenges that we had to face. Of course, during the early stages as well, resourcing became an issue as well. We had a number of staff that self-isolated. Schools closed, and that meant staff with young children had childcare issues. And for those that were not yet enabled for home working, it meant that they were not able to do any work. So as soon as we were able, we offered flexible working for those staff. We extended our office hours from 6 a.m. To 9 p.m. And when I say office hours, I mean working hours, not physically everybody being in the office. And Saturdays became a normal working day as well. And that's just so that people with young children could work around them. And as Joe mentioned about kind of homeschooling, etc. So it gave our staff flexibility in terms of when they were able to work and make the time up. Of course, home working doesn't suit everybody, and we recognise that, particularly staff that live alone, or those that like to interact with colleagues face to face, or those that just didn't have proper home working facilities or the space at home. And their health and well-being was important to us as well. So keeping regular contact with staff was essential, so that they didn't feel isolated or abandoned. The council produced a health and well-being guide as well, and set up a health and well-being hotline as well, where staff could speak directly to trained occupational health staff for any confidential help and advice. We are a key service because we have to pay pensions to nearly 150,000 pensioners every month who rely, many of them who rely on their main as their main source of income. So we've kept our office open with the minimum of staff. We also have a couple of staff who don't have broadband at home, even though we offered to pay for their installation and usage. They still prefer to come in the office. Other staff come in on as and when they need to. So we keep the office open, but with the minimum number of staff available in the office. All meetings, whether external or internal, have suddenly become remote meetings as well, with a heavy reliance on being able to use technology, such as telephone, conference calls, or video conferencing using Microsoft Teams or Zoom. Not all councils, and certainly our councils, haven't been able to support the video conferencing to any great degree because of security issues, because of capacity issues. So that's something that we're still working on. Employer training is still a challenge we have to overcome, and we're looking at webinars similar to this one to make sure our engagement with the employers continues. And whilst the volume of work completed and our KPI targets dipped at the beginning, they are now back to more or less normal levels. And this is important for us in reassuring our members, and particularly those of us that have external clients, that it is business as usual. In all this, communicating to members at an early stage was very important to assure them that their benefits are secure, especially with the fall in the stock markets, and also what our priorities were and what action we were taking to ensure continuity of service. We've updated our website with a specific page on COVID-19, and this helped us manage the number of calls to our contact centre. Communication to employers, third-party clients, etc., is also very important to ensure, to reassure them that it's business as usual, and we've achieved this by regular contact, regular reports, meetings, email alerts, etc. And of course, this issue has impacted on them as well. So communication is a two-way thing, because they've got to meet their obligations to us and their members as well. So the flow of information has to continue, and this has been the case for us, except maybe for a couple of smaller employers that were late in sending in their monthly returns. What does the pensions regulator have to say? The TPR have said that administration should focus on activities that are key to pension savers, and the main one, obviously, and this is why we're all in the business, is that to pay benefits to our members, and this includes paying monthly pensions. This includes retirement benefits, death benefits, etc. We run 34 payrolls every month, and we can now run those payrolls remotely from home from start to finish. For the bigger local government payrolls we run, our staff actually prefer to come into the office to run those payrolls in case of any IT issues or any assistance if the payrolls fall over. For the short term, what we've done for our daily payrolls is we've made that into a weekly payroll, so we only run it once a week, and that's just to minimise the number of payrolls we have to run. We'll review that and revert to dailies as soon as we can. The risk of pension scams has increased in the current climate, and savers need to be aware and more vigilant against the threat of scammers who seem to be popping up everywhere, not just in the pensions industry, but I'm sure everybody gets email alerts asking them to click on this link and that link. So we're urging members, before they transfer out, to make sure that they have taken proper guidance, proper advice, and not to make any rash decisions. Both employer and employer contributions have to be paid to the fund. However, funds may have started getting requests from employers who are facing difficulty to defer their employer contributions. To date, I think we've had 2 such requests, but I suspect that as the situation carries on, there may be more requests coming in. And therefore, careful consideration needs to be given before looking at these options. And obviously, it has to be a last resort, because the pension fund has to protect the contributions and the benefits to members. There is no discretion to employee contributions, and those have to be paid. Members need good support to make decisions in these challenging circumstances. Uncertainty around employment may mean that members may be thinking of leaving the scheme. So making sure that members are aware of what benefits they're giving up, such as the death benefits, the employer contributions that are made, and that they're aware of the 50-50 scheme as well. So again, it's engaging with the members to make sure that they're making informed decisions. And it's likely that some administrative breaches of law may occur as well. And the TPR have stated that they will take proportionate and fair approach to any action that they may take. If the breach is rectified within a short time frame, which is no longer than 3 months, then and doesn't have a negative impact on the savers, then it doesn't need to be reported to the TPR. Obviously, it still needs to be recorded in the breaches processes that we all have. So there's a lot of things that we need to prepare for as administrators. Joe's already mentioned McCloud, but I'm going to mention McCloud again because that is probably the next piece of big work that's really going to hit our inboxes effectively. And I understand the consultation on the McCloud remedy is expected to start in June. And most administering authorities will need to gather information from their employers regarding service and hours, etc., going back as far as April 2014. That in itself probably will be a challenge because employers, whether they've retained that information, some probably will have, because we are looking 8 years now, and some probably won't have retained that information. So it's how we engage with the employers, how we collect that data. We need to communicate the McLeod and explain to members what the changes mean, what protection they might have, etc. And obviously, we've got to engage with the software providers in terms of what they can do to help us as administrators. I mentioned earlier on that we administer fire pension scheme for 16 fire authorities. McCloud will have a much bigger impact, I feel, on the fire schemes. On the LG schemes, we have protections and we transition members all into the new scheme, whereas the fire schemes are going through a gradual process of transitioning. So I think that the McCloud will have a much bigger impact on fire schemes. GMP reconciliations, we're all expecting final data cuts from HMRC. I believe that process has been delayed because of the current situation. So that exercise has been rumbling on for years as well, and where we expect it for that to be closed, it is still something that is still ongoing. New models for service delivery. This current situation, I think, probably has got all of us thinking in terms of how we deliver our service going forward. What we thought was the norm may not be the norm going forward now, because we've all suddenly evidenced the fact that we can deliver the service in a different way. You know, do we now look at extended, longer opening days? Do we look at weekend working or providing service at weekends? As I mentioned, our staff now may now want a different work-life balance because the flexibility is now there. We don't all need to be in the office. In fact, we can work from anywhere. So it's certainly something to consider going forward. Obviously, with all these new ways of working, what we've had to do in terms of remote working is the additional costs. We're already faced with cost pressures, but now we find ourselves looking at additional cost, having to resource the new ways of working. I still believe the LGPS compared to the private sector still gives very good value, and long may that continue. How can we make our administration easier? No surprise, obviously, stating the obvious, I think, but more automation. Certainly from the member's perspective, using the secure portal that most of us have, not just for viewing documents, not for simple updates, like addresses, updating death grant nomination, but more now for doing estimates, looking at options like retiring online, looking at uploading documents, and generally correspond with the fund using the secure portal. We need, I believe, we need to process by exception now. Let the members do all the work, and we just do the exceptions. I believe we're very slow in embracing new technology or demanding more from our system suppliers, and maybe it's now time to turn the screw and engage more vigorously with our system suppliers, software suppliers, and other suppliers as well. I'm sure a lot of us already use the secure portals for exchanging information with employers, but again, let's do more. Let's see how much more we can do. Collaboration on issues and solutions. as LGPS funds, we all have the same issues and the same challenges. And whilst we get very valuable support from the likes of the LGA and from our actuaries, I think collaborating with our peers, again, is something that we probably need to do more of. My fund particularly is part of the Metropolitan Pension Fund Group, and we meet regularly to share and discuss a whole range of issues and learn from each other, see what others are doing, and see how we can improve on our services that we provide. We also engage regularly with our big employers in the fund as well, and exchange information with them and see what their challenges and solutions are to some of the issues that we face, and see how we can help them overcome those as well. Of course, additional resources is something that we always require more and more, because pensions is complicated. It's not getting any easier. So more staff is an obvious solution sometimes. How do we recruit more staff in these current challenging circumstances? And we're certainly at the moment looking for additional staff. We've put an internal advert out, which we probably will go external pretty soon as well. But the challenges we face are that we may be looking at recruitment remotely by video, using, again, things like Teams or Zoom to interview people. And that certainly will be a novelty for us. And obviously we need better tools and equipment. Whilst in the current climate, we've rolled out equipment at a very rapid rate to our staff, we had very little choice in what equipment we rolled out. Some of it was very basic, but now we need to look at better tools, better equipment, because it sounds like this is here to stay for a while. So let's see how we can help our staff to do their jobs much better. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Yunus. Thanks, Joe. We've got a lot of questions that have come in. So I'm going to start answering them. Start asking them of you. Actually, there's quite a few questions around suppliers and resource. So, for example, somebody's asked, I'll put these kind of together. How do you break the software supplier duopoly? And at the same time, how could the LGPS use its total size and muscle to provide other providers to improve overall cost and benefit? And then I had a question as well around, do you think there will ever be a standard for employers to submit information? Because we hear that a lot from people, that employers are sending information in lots of different ways. So really all about kind of how information comes in and dealing with these various software suppliers. So Joe first and then Yunus.
They are very good questions. As someone that's relatively come back to pensions after a break, it surprised me how few suppliers there are in the market, and the clear profit margins that they must be making based on the license costs that I pay at LPPA anyway. I think it requires two things really. So one is, a good software house who has the, who can see this as a market that's ripe for disruption, and wants to enter. But then secondly to that, I think it requires us to buy into that, because my observation, particularly with my stakeholders, is that they're quite risk averse. So it would be more difficult for me to argue a move away from one of the big two, given the complexity of the calculations and those kinds of things. So it would require somebody new into the market who can reassure us that we're not taking on excess risk in terms of getting the calculations right, and providing that good service. In terms of your question about employers, and I'll just, if you ask me the second one again, but in terms of your question about employers, I do think as we move to these portals where we exchange information, so I don't know how many people are using Haywood's product, but how many of them then use iConnect, and then those of you that use a Civica product, again, whether you're using the portals to exchange information, I can see that growing over time, that we start to exchange information in a consistent way. And I think we can encourage that to a certain extent. One of the things that I see across the 17 clients we have is some of them do monthly returns, some of them do annual returns. it's really evident when we had the valuation last year, how much easier that is for us as an administrator when you've got a client that's doing monthly returns rather than annual returns. So it's up to us, to proactively work with the clients that are on annual returns to move them to monthly returns. That evens out that flow of work over the year for us as administrators and smooths those kind of peaks and troughs.
Really good. Yunus, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just add on the software. As Joe says, the market is dominated by two suppliers. There is now a new framework out there, which should make it a lot easier for funds that are looking for options. I know certainly there is reluctance to move from one software supplier to another because of the challenges in terms of data, the timescales of any project, etc. But it's certainly dominated by two big suppliers. But we, as pension fund administrators, need to do more to challenge those suppliers as well in terms of what they deliver, how they deliver, and really we as customers need to dictate to them what we want rather than the other way around, which happens quite a lot of the time, really. And in terms of employer portals, certainly we've used monthly returns for all our employers for a number of years now, and in fact we insist any employers that come on board have to use monthly portals, and it certainly helps us in terms of our data quality and in terms of getting the annual benefit statement exercise started at a much sooner stage than normally would have done. We've already started issuing our ABSs. We normally issue 2,000 per day, but because of the current crisis, we've reduced that down to 500 for the initial few weeks, and now we've increased that to 1,000 a day. Again, just to kind of even out the load on our contact centre in case of any queries, etc. But yeah, the monthly returns, I think is a must really in terms of more automation and again, as I said earlier, doing administration by exception really.
Right, and just kind of a quick question because we're nearly out of time, sadly, but I'm going to ask you each to answer for no more than 1 minute. What is the thing that you think will be the biggest challenge to the LGPS and the public sector administrations over the next, I don't know, can you give us sort of a 12-month and a 3-year, a 1 year and a 3-year horizon? So Joe first, then Yunus.
I think the biggest challenge is going to be the fallout of COVID-19. The financial implications of that are going to be huge. So I think in addition to McLeod and all the other complex things we've got, there's also going to be, not that there isn't already, but an even stronger focus on providing value for money pensions administration. Right,
and Yunus?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is really for the moment, certainly for the currently, the biggest challenge for me is the HMRC rules for annual allowance LTA, because that seems to be catching more and more people out, and the complexities of that is ever so time consuming. Certainly McCloud brings challenges as well, and again, how long that exercise will take. If I compare to GMP reconciliation, then it's not certainly a short-term challenge. Other stuff probably, it's all down to how regulations change and how we make the scheme much more affordable to employers, because obviously everything that happens it comes at a cost, and with stock market volatility, I hope by next valuation things are a lot better, but again, it's the affordability for employers. So those are kind of challenges really that we need to be aware of and plan for.
Right, okay. There's really time for one more very quick question, maybe 30 seconds each. You have a magic wand, pretend you have a magic wand. How would you make pensions administration more efficient, Yunus, than Joe?
I already mentioned one, which is the LTAA, or certainly streamline that or raise the threshold so that it is genuinely the high earners that are impacted. And my second one would be really automation, and I think local government pensions really is a bit slow on the uptake in that, but it does involve much more investment, but certainly the automation is much more really where the direction we should be going for.
I would like a super fantastic software system that's really engaging for members so that they self-service as much as possible.
I'd like to thank Joe and Yunus for joining us today. And thank you all for watching today's webinar. And we hope that we'll be able to see you next year in Gloucestershire and hopefully even before. Thanks so much.